see the faith and the love that He has given me has been precious, has been a real gift, because I didn't do anything for it. He did it for me. He looked for me day after day. My name is Linda Torres. I'm originally from Mexico City. I'm 39 years old. And my conversion story is, I would say, a life story, because now that I'm a bit older, I can see that Jesus always looked for me, even when I didn't know it. But I also acknowledge that it was a miracle, because no one in my family was really practicing our faith. I was baptized, and we were what we call social Catholics. We will go to Easter, to Christmas, to weddings, but we didn't really know God, and we didn't know our faith. Sundays was the days of going out for a barbecue or football, soccer, but it was not the day of the Lord. It's a bit sad, but if I look into my family, my extended family, every single sin that you could name had been committed within my extended family, all of them. And not proud of it, but that also gives me a bit of an insight of how much God loved me and how much God wanted me and wanted my heart. I could still see traces of Him calling me, even if faith was not practiced or religion was not practiced in my family. One of the first signs of His love was that in the same street that my parents bought our house, almost across the road, there was a church. And this was back in the 80s when things were a bit safer. And I remember my parents will send me to buy soda or buy something from the shop. So I always will cross in front of this church. And I remember getting into it just for 2 seconds as a girl. Maybe I was about 10, I think. And just have a little, hi Jesus, bye Jesus, and walk away and do the chores that my parents asked me to do. I also remember, well, my family was not integrated. We were not very united. So when I was upset or lonely or crying, I also remember calling for God, and no one really told me, but I knew that I could cry to God for help. So that's probably the early stages of my life, where now that I look back, I know God was present, even though in my family there was we were not practicing our faith or religion at home. I didn't do my first communion until I was 15. I tried myself to go to catechism. I enrolled myself to catechism, but there was no encouragement, so I didn't persevere when I was about 10, so I didn't do it. Then I used to sing in the choir at high school in my teen years. And I really enjoyed singing. And at the end of high school, I knew I couldn't sing anymore in the choir. And that's something I wanted to do. And I knew one of my neighbors was in the church choir. And he was a good-looking neighbor. So I thought, maybe I can join the choir, the church choir. he himself was practicing his faith and his family. So when I mentioned to him, oh, you think maybe I can join the choir? He even said, you? Really? Do you know if you join, you'll have to go to Mass? I said, yes, I know, I'll have to Mass. And then he was like, every Sunday? I said, yes, every Sunday. That's how weak my faith and my practicing of the faith was. Even my 12-year-old neighbor will notice that and say, are you for real? So I joined it. It wasn't probably not for the true reasons. It was just because I wanted to sing and I wanted to be around other young people. So I did. I joined the choir. Again, I had no idea about faith, and probably I wasn't the best behaving person in the choir. We did a lot of crazy things. Even if I was already going to the church, because I didn't have that relationship with Jesus, those were probably my most wild years. I will go at 13, I will go to pubs because I look older and my brother was around who was already 18. So I will go to pubs and drink and get drunk and just dress not up modestly and just go out and have fun and didn't really care about anything. I was a good student. That's something that never dropped. But I didn't have that connection with Jesus. And I think a conversion story is always about that personal encounter with Jesus. You can go to church. I didn't go to church, but you can go to church every Sunday and not have that. And so it's more about that relationship, that real personal encounter with God than going to church, because I started to go to church at that age, around 12, 13. But I didn't have that. I was just going for socializing and for music. So I dropped again. I dropped the church. I had an argument with someone in the choir and I said, I'm not coming back. So I didn't go back to the church for maybe 2 years, about 2-3 years. And I just concentrated in studying, working. It was a very difficult time also at my family. By then I was turning about 19, I think 19, 20 years old. And my parents were getting divorced. And then the boyfriend that I had for 5 years, I think by now my longest relationship, I was with this boy for 5 years. We broke up. So there were a lot of things happening at that time. And God was not in all of this. I didn't let him in. Even though he was already around me, I didn't let him in. And by then I was already working because my dad didn't want to pay any of my bills anymore when he left. Had to drop university because he didn't want to pay it anymore. And I started working, and I had this need of going to the church, which conveniently was again on the same road, knowing that it was probably closed, but I thought I'm still going. So I went and it was open. These people decided on that very night that they wanted to have a rosary night for working people like me. And that was the first night they did, on a Tuesday night. And at the end of the rosary, I saw the priest. I didn't even know this priest because I've been away for a couple of years, so they changed the previous priest. And I asked him, can I have confession? And he said, yes, which I will always be grateful. Many priests now, if you don't have an appointment, if it's not confession time, they will turn you away and say, come back another day, but he didn't. And I will always be grateful for that. He said yes, and he heard my confession. And then we started to talk, and we talked for a long time. everyone left the church. The sacristan closed. I left the church that night about midnight because he was very patient in hearing everything that I had in my heart. And one of the things that I confessed that night and that I shared with him was, I go to work because I have to, I eat because I have to, and I do all the daily things because I know I have to. But I have no issues if I die now. If I die tomorrow, I wouldn't mind. That's how down I was without even recognizing it until I put it into words. That's when I was like, wow. I even said, I don't kill myself because I know that's wrong and I don't have the courage, but I don't want to live anymore. I have no reasons to keep going and to live. And at the end of that conversation, he said, do you want to have a spiritual direction? Do you want me to be your spiritual director? I didn't know what was that, because I had no formation in faith, not a proper formation in faith. And I said, what is that? And then he said, it's a bit of what we have done. We'll talk and you can share whatever you feel like sharing, and I'll help you and give you some guidance and shed some light on what you're experiencing. So, oh, I like that. I really enjoyed this. So he became my spiritual director for about a year or 2 years. And through this relationship with him, my conversion took place because I experienced through him as a priest, Jesus' love, Jesus' care, that someone cared, that someone actually cared about me. And he made that point of always make it clear for me that it was Jesus, it was not him, it was Jesus himself caring for me, for my spiritual life, and even for my daily life. After that, he was moved to a different parish, completely opposite of the diocese site. I was on one end and he was moved completely to the other end. And he also discerned. I didn't, he discerned. He said, that's it. I gave you what you needed and you can stand on your feet now. And you might find another spiritual director, but the appropriate thing will be that you find someone else or that you walk on your own for a little bit. And I think that was very clever and wise, because that helped me to rely more in God and not just on that particular priest. So I had also a lesson of detachment, because I was very attached to him, obviously. So I had a big lesson of detachment and relying more in Jesus. And it was good because when he walked away and let Jesus himself be next to me, that's also when my relationship grew stronger and my faith grew stronger. From that on, that was a turning point for me of this is it. I'm Catholic, I'm fully committed to Jesus, to God. There is no turn back. And from there on, I have been just on this journey for about 20 years now of growing in my faith, in my relationship with Jesus. I have fallen back. I have not walked away, but I have probably had these periods where I'm not so close to him. And he always calls me back and he always grabs me and says, you're mine, you're mine. Jesus property. Another facet of my relationship with Jesus was this priest asked me if I wanted to explore the religious life. And I said, no, not me. But I did visit a couple of congregations back then in my early 20s. And even though I said no, I felt the calling But I said no. And then I went on dating and having boyfriends. And then I went to Canada. Then I went back to Mexico. Then I went to Sydney. And even in Sydney, I had a couple of boyfriends. But it was always back on my mind. And that was another fight I had with Jesus. I said, no, you're forcing me. I know you want me, but you're forcing me. I don't. I had this kind of fight with him for a few years saying, you're not forcing me to be a religious. I don't want. Then another wonderful spiritual director, Jesus always knows who I need in my life at a certain point. He sent this beautiful priest in Sydney, very prayerful, loved the Eucharist and taught me to love the Eucharist. And he said, okay, I want you to spend 1 hour in silence with Jesus, if possible every day, at least 3 times a week. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I did. And it became part of my spiritual routine to spend 1 hour in silence in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And that started to change me and to soften my heart and to open up all the areas of my life that I haven't before, until I fell on my knees and I said, okay, Jesus, I think you want me for yourself, and you know me better than I know myself. If you want me, if you really want me, change me. You know I don't want you. You know I don't want to be a religious or consecrated. I want to get married. I want to have a family, children. I want what everyone has. But I know you're calling me. And through all these years, I have experienced your goodness, your love. So if you're calling me to this consciously in my head, rationally, I know you want the best for me. It's not in my heart yet. So change my heart so I can love you and I can desire this as much as you do for me. And when you open just a little bit of a window for God, He takes care of everything. Not long after that, He changed my heart. On that moment, I could just drop everything and join a convent straight away. It was so strong that I could just leave everything there. And I looked for different congregations, but it didn't happen. Then I went back to Mexico and I stayed there during COVID. And during that time, I put in contact with consecrated virgins, and I started to discern that specific vocation. Another thing that is part of my life as a Mexican, obviously, I have a devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe. In 2008, I went to Quebec to the International Eucharistic Congress. On that specific congress, I actually had a chance to speak with Cardinal Mario Bergoglio, today's Pope Francis, and as Spanish speakers, and as Argentinian, he kind of joked. He said, I'm jealous that Our Lady didn't appear in Argentina and she appeared in Mexico. And then he became a bit more serious and he said, listen to Our Lady, listen to her. You have her, listen. I think that was kind of prophetic. And when I went back to Mexico, I did the consecration to Our Lady of Guadalupe at the Basilica through the Archconfraternity of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And that's what I do at the moment. I keep rosaries and talks and events dedicated to Our Lady of Guadalupe, or I'm invited to talk about the devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe or her message, because it's very extensive. If you ask me, I could talk about hours about Our Lady of Guadalupe, the iconography, the story, the conversions. It's beautiful. And working with the Arch Confraternity, we also are very mindful that Our Lady of Guadalupe is pregnant. It's one of the few images of Mary being pregnant, which means she's a living tabernacle. She's carrying Jesus within her. That's something we keep very aware, or we're very aware of it, that Jesus is always the center. Through my life, I have seen Jesus being my Savior and coming back and pulling me out and calling me to Him and loving me and just looking after me. I mean, I've been in Canada, in Sydney, now in Adelaide, and as my spiritual director said, look for the kingdom of God and everything will be given. I'm a living experience of that. Everywhere I have gone, I try my best. I'm not perfect. I try my best to keep Jesus as my center, and He has always provided for all my needs and beyond, even more than I could expect. Even if our family is a mess, He can get something beautiful out of it. And I believe this is my case. Even if my family was not perfect and we had a lot of issues, I can see the faith and the love that He has given me has been precious, has been a real gift, because I didn't do anything for it. He did it for me. He looked for me day after day. I don't know who prayed for my conversion. I might know probably when I'm in heaven who prayed for my conversion, but I will always be grateful because that enabled Jesus to intervene in my life, and that enabled my heart to be open to that grace of His love and His calling, His salvation.
You can't always.
This is the death.
Remarkably
Turn back towards God. Rise up.